The Philadelphia Eagles had a busy 2 days, signing a safety to the defense on Friday and doing some rebranding on Thursday. Takeaways today on Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Louie DiBiase, joining you on a Friday edition of the show. Guys, we're free and available all throughout the week on all podcast platforms, also on YouTube in video form. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Locked On Birds and at DiBiase LOE. We've been your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, running now strong for the last 4 years. Also analysts over at Fox 43. You can check out all our written and video content over at fox43.com. What a busy couple days for the Eagles. And that's crazy to say. We went down to 3 to 4 shows a week until the dead zone is over. Training camp begins July 26th for the Eagles at the NovaCare Complex. You know, things were dying down. There wasn't any news the last few weeks after the Eagles signed James Bradberry in May. They went through OTAs and things have been kind of dead. We went through our A Beef History series. We started up some nostalgia content, and then boom, Thursday, the Eagles do some rebranding on their logos, which we'll get into. Wasn't super popular for the majority of Eagles fans. And then on my way home from the studio today, getting ready to podcast and talk about logos and jerseys and helmets, the Eagles made a move. They made a move at the position that I have been complaining about for the last 6 months, how they've really just been going with the bare minimum over the last few years. They are not very talented at this position. They need to address it in the NFL draft. Gino, my co-host Gino Camilleri, has been complaining about this really since Malcolm Jenkins left after the 2019 season, and he was complaining even before that the Eagles really needed help at safety. They needed to invest some significant resources at this position early in the draft and through free agency with some big contracts. The Eagles didn't really need to because, again, they were getting by with Jenkins and McLeod, some of the best duos of safeties the Eagles have had in their entire history, consistency-wise, from 2014 with Jenkins, and then McLeod comes in 2016, all the way up till 2019. The Eagles did not need help at the safety position until they left, and it got really bad, bare minimum. You know, you're getting through with Anthony Harris and Marcus Epps and an older McLeod who just wasn't the same. And it didn't happen in the draft. The board didn't fall. They chose Jordan Davis over Kyle Hamilton. You know, Jaquan Brisker doesn't fall in the second round. Neither does Daxton Hill or Louie. So you're like, okay, this is just going to be the weakness of the team, right? This is going to be the weakness of the team. But you bring in James Bradberry, you got Darius Slay, you got Avonte Maddox. That trio of corners is going to help mask that weakness. So too is the much improved front seven with Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Hassan Riddick, Kazir White, Davian Taylor healthy, Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave. That front seven, the rotation, the depth, all of this was going to make up for Anthony Harris and Marcus Epps probably being the worst starting safety tandem in the NFL. Well, you're not going to have to deal with that. You didn't add a complete star today, but the Eagles did make a signing. They brought in a 7-year starter. I should say 8 years, really. 2015 up until this year, he's going to start with the Eagles, I think. But it's a 7-year starter, a second-round pick back in 2015 from the San Francisco 49ers. It's Jaquiski Tartt. Jaquiski Tartt, the Niners' second-round pick from 7 years ago, a long-term starter, has agreed to a 1-year deal with the Philadelphia Eagles, finally adding some talent to this position. This year, I didn't think it was going to happen. I thought it was going to be Anthony Harris, Marcus Epps, and Kevon Wallace compete. And again, the rest of the defense really masks that weakness. But the Eagles love to make moves after the draft. We kept saying they're not done. We wanted a safety or corner high in the draft. We didn't get it. And we were kind of getting a little antsy because you're like, this roster looks really good on paper, but is the defensive backfield going to hold this team back? They brought in James Bradberry in May, kind of like they brought in Steven Nelson last summer. And Howie Roseman does it again, a late summer signing of Jaquiski Tartt coming over from the Niners. He's 31 years old. Again, he has been a 7-year starter with that football team. A versatile safety that's played deep, cover 2, cover 1. He's played in the box. He's got coverage ability. Is he the same player he was early in his career? No, but he did start 14 games last year for that team, 3 playoff games as well. And I think he's an instant upgrade over what you have at that position. I do. And I think it's still going to be a 3-man rotation between him, Anthony Harris, and Marcus Epps. Is he like astronomically better than Harris and Epps? I wouldn't say so. I think he's around that tier, but I think he's a step up. I think he's a better player, and it just gives you more depth and flexibility at a position that you really needed it. And again, was I panicking? No, not after they signed James Bradberry. I was not nearly close to happy about the talent at the safety position, but I knew that they were going to be okay because of everything else they had on defense. But at the same time, in the modern day NFL, you want to have versatility in the defensive backfield. You want to be able to run dime packages where you're using 6 defensive backs. And although you have Bradberry, Maddox, and Slay and nickel packages, you don't have that 6th defensive back. You don't have that corner. Zech McPherson is your 4th corner. Like, that doesn't really make you want to take a linebacker off the field. At safety, Kevon Wallace doesn't make you want to do that either. But in a pass-heavy league, you need to have a dime option. You need to have the ability to use 6 defensive backs, and that's what Jaquiski Tartt gives you. Again, he is not significantly better than Anthony Harris or Marcus Epps, but again, you needed to add some bodies there. Like, this isn't Kyle Hamilton. This isn't your long-term solution at the safety position, but it is a player that's an upgrade, a player that's had a lot of starting experience, a player that's played in a lot of playoff games, and a player that is kind of underrated. Not really talked about a lot, but a stat I just pulled up from PFF. So safeties, the top 3 safeties when it comes to lowest completion rate allowed in coverage since 2019, number 1 is actually Rodney McLeod. So that might go to show the Eagles maybe made the wrong decision letting McLeod walk. But number 2 is Marcus May, and Jaquiski Tartt is at number 3. He has allowed only a 57.5% completion percentage when targeted in coverage at safety. He's a top 3 safety when it comes to the lowest completion rate allowed in coverage among everyone at that position since 2019. So this isn't just some random signing in June. This is pretty significant. This was the last domino to fall for the 2022 season. Again, this isn't a long-term solution at safety, but this was the last hole this season. And now the Eagles look very complete on the defensive side of the football. Safety was clearly a weakness. It wasn't going to derail the season, but it was the weakness where you did not really have a short-term or long-term solution. Again, I like Marcus Epps, but that's not somebody you can bank on, and he's your only solution, right? He's your only plan. So this is a big move for this year. And now you look at offense and defense. There aren't a lot of question marks. This team is ready to compete for the NFC East. This team is ready to compete for the playoffs, win playoff games. It's exciting. It's an exciting time to be an Eagles fan. Safety was the last shoe to drop, and Jaquiski Tartt is the option. The 1-year deal just signed about, I would say, 30 minutes ago. So the Eagles finally get some help in the deep defensive backfield. Jaquiski Tartt added to the safety room with Anthony Harris, Marcus Epps, and Kevon Wallace. Great move for the Birds. The fun offseason continues, and it's great having something to talk about signing-wise June 17th of the offseason, because normally around this time of the year, we start to do some nostalgia content and a lot of different, drafts and, different things like that, rankings. It's that time of year where you're trying to create content and, get creative for sure. Normally what you talk about too is things like jerseys and logos, rankings of that type. Well, we are going to get into that coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles, because the Eagles did the big news of the week before they signed Jaquiski Tartt was that the Eagles did some rebranding with one of their watermark logos on Thursday. We'll get into that coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. And guys, today's podcast is sponsored by BetOnline, the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. Find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs. We got the Stanley Cup right now. The Avalanche are up 1-0 against the back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, Tampa Bay Lightning. Bet on that series. Bet on the MLB. The Philadelphia Phillies are red hot right now. They're now 33-31, 2 games over 500, despite that horrible start. They just dominated Washington yesterday 10-1. Bet the over on the Phillies right now, scoring, walk-off home runs. I'm not even a baseball guy, and Philadelphia is getting me in. Bet on the Phillies, bet on all of MLB on betonline.net. Again, they remain your best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs, MMA, boxing, and golf as well. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action, because BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, Eagles fans, I'm Louie DiBiase, and we thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. It's a Friday edition of the show, and we do have an important favor to ask you. So we put together a survey so we can learn more about listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On Podcasts. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes a survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. To take our audience survey, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. We thank you so much for your help. So the Eagles signed Jaquiski Tartt. They needed a safety really badly. This is a significant upgrade, I think, over what they had. It creates flexibility, versatility in the defensive backfield, which you really needed. And now the Eagles look as complete on paper as they have looked in a very long time. It is very exciting to think about the possibilities of this team's upside in 2022. That wasn't really the news of the week, though. We didn't really expect the Eagles to make a signing. We thought, hey, it's going to be Anthony Harris and Marcus Epps heading into the offseason. Let's start talking about past feuds in Eagles history. Let's start doing our What If series again. Hint, that's going to be coming back here on Locked On Eagles. Let's start ranking jerseys, things like that. Let's start talking about a rebranding, because that's what happened on Thursday. That was the news of the week for the Eagles. They were the talk of the NFL because they didn't change their logo, but the Eagles did change one of their watermark lettering brands. So everybody remembers this. Everybody remembers this logo from the Eagles, right? It's in the end zones. It has been their alternate. It's on the jersey patch right below the NFL shield. It's been their logo since the early 2000s when they rebranded from Kelly Green. Well, the Eagles announced that they're going more simplistic. They're getting a little more modern with it. They are rebranding to the simple white text that says Eagles with two little arrows on the E on both E's. And overall, Eagles fans did not love this rebranding. And I, at first, looked at it, and I didn't think it was horrible when you saw it. And I'm going to pull it up for our YouTube viewers, but it didn't look horrible when it was below the actual logo. Let me share the screen here. So right there, it doesn't look that bad. In green text, it actually looks pretty good too. With the white font too and a green background, it looks okay. Like, that's fine to me. But although it's the exact same font, it looks like is the Lions, the Jets, the Rams rebranding. It just feels like the entire NFL and the entire world of sports is going in this direction. So again, it's not horrible, but it's not nearly as good as what they had. If it isn't broken, don't fix it. Like, when you compare it, again, it looked fine, but then when you compare it to the old logo, it's like, it's not even close to being as good. Standing alone, this logo is not great. Again, with the eagle head above it, it looks okay. But when you compare it to the end zone logo of the past that was also on the jerseys, it just doesn't look good at all. It just has no character. It looks bland. It looks like just this typical corporate America, Goldman Sachs, like super professional. We got to be a marketing type of company logo. And I don't know why everybody's taking themselves so seriously now, and they're so boring and simplistic with this rebranding. I like the character of the old Eagles lettering here. It had a 90s vibe to it that I really liked. And some people think, oh, it's cartoony looking, it's cheesy. It's sports. Like, I like that. Everybody shouldn't have this boring text. Everybody's going to, and especially like in the mid 2000s, you saw this too with jerseys. Everybody was changing from the 90s was amazing in all of sports, bright colors, crazy creative logos. Even in the NFL, like The Super Bowl logos were different every year and colorful, and they were branded based on the cities they were in. And now it's just a Lombardi trophy with different Roman numerals on it every single year, but it's the same logo. Everything's so corporatized and kind of the same. Like this logo too, it looks just like the Lions, the Rams, the Buccaneers, the Jets. It looks all the same. I want uniqueness and character, and everybody's just going in this route, and it sucks because sports jerseys, logos, that kind of branding is part of the fun. And I think you take kind of the fun out of it when you go from the old logo to this new one. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it. It was kind of torn on Twitter yesterday, but I think the majority of fans do agree. I think the end zones are going to suffer. I think the jerseys are going to suffer. I think one good thing about it, and my boy Vince Quinn over at WIP and Birds on Broad said this, or the Bird and the Bellman, is their podcast with John Barchard. He said one good thing about this, and I agree, is that, this new lettering will fit the Kelly Green design better in 2023. I guess that's a silver lining for sure. But if you're going to have that in mind, I would have just rather went back to the Kelly Green font from the 1990s. You know what I mean? I don't think this is great. I think it's going to look a little cheesy on the jerseys. I think the old logo looks significantly better. And then the end zones, like, I'm going to miss that, when they wear black on Thursday Night Football and they wear the black helmet this year. I would have loved to see that logo again, the old logo in the end zone. It was just so sharp, even if it was a green or black end zone. Instead, we've got this. I'm going to pull it up on our screen again. And I apologize to our audio listeners, but I'm pointing to a graphic that a fan made on Twitter yesterday of Lincoln Financial Field. On one side, it's the old end zone, and on the left side, it's what the new design is going to look like. And look at it. It just looks so much more boring. It doesn't have the character of the old logo. And people say, sometimes in sports, these logos are too cartoony, but I don't know. I mean, have you seen what the Utah Jazz are doing now with their jerseys? These lame yellow and black practice looking jerseys. When they have the 90s look, the purple Stocktons, the mountain look, those are like the best jerseys in the NBA. And instead, they're creating now what I think is the worst jersey. And a lot of teams are going to this. And the NFL is moving in a good direction. You got the 2 helmet rule now. Throwback jerseys are coming back. I saw the Dirty Birds coming back this year with the red helmet. Eagles are bringing back Kelly Green jerseys in 2023. A lot of teams are going back to their vintage look. But you still have some rebranding like this. And there's just like this consensus that this is the way branding has to be now in the modern day. With colors, with text font, with just no style to it at all. I don't know. I think sports in general, hockey, basketball, football especially, the big three, the NBA, NHL, NFL, I think most fans would agree that was the golden era for jerseys, logos, uniforms. In the entirety of these leagues' histories, they were all in the 90s, I think. And that's what I liked about that Eagles logo. It's going away now. And again, the rebranding isn't awful. It's okay, but definitely isn't something I thought they should have changed. If you're going to change, you got to do it for the better. Don't just change to change. Change to bring back Kelly Green. Don't just be like, we got to get a jersey in here, so let's bring back the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets jersey again from like 2007. No, I'm good then just running it back with the Midnight Greens. So overall, I think listeners and our Eagles fans out there don't love this rebranding. I saw some out there that did like it more simplistic, but overall, it doesn't seem like a super popular move the Eagles actually made. And so maybe that's why they're like, oh, damn, this didn't go well. We got to go sign a safety tomorrow to make everybody feel better. Let's go add Jaquiski Tartt. Maybe that's what it was. Hey, I'll trade it off. I'll sacrifice that logo for a safety in 2022. Would you? Yeah, I think I would. Jaquiski Tartt's going to be big for the Eagles defense this year. So I think that's a pretty solid trade-off to not feel as good about the logo Thursday, but the Eagles defense gets a really good, veteran safety for the defense on Friday. We'll continue this episode of Locked On Eagles coming up next right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. And guys, we want to give a shout out to another one of our sponsors at the Locked On Podcast Network. It's RockAuto.com. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, look, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to RockAuto.com right now, at home and in your pocket. Save time and money with Rock Auto. Don't choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership. Rock Auto, their prices are reliably low for every customer, and they have everything you can need. Brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. Head over to rockauto.com right now. Again, see all the parts available for your car or your truck. Make sure you write down Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. All right, Eagles fans, we're wrapping up this Friday edition of Locked On Eagles. Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. The Eagles agreed to a one-year contract today with former 49ers starter at safety Jaquiski Tartt, a second-round pick in the 2015 NFL Draft. He has been a 7-year starter for that team, started 14 games last year, was the missing piece the Eagles had left for the 2022 season on defense. Overall, in general now, like there is not a significant hole on this Eagles team. I guess now all you can ask what could hold this team back is if Jalen Hurts takes the next step. And even that's like Jalen Hurts is going to fall off like Carson Wentz did in 2020. So even if he doesn't take another step this year, you know, even if you get 2021 Jalen Hurts, this is still going to be a much better football team than they were last year. It's crazy, really crazy how this offseason completely turned around. And again, we weren't panicking when they only brought in Hassan Reddick, you know, in March when free agency first opened up, because Gino and I both had said in our free agency preview podcast that, look, what's some of the biggest things the Eagles could do in free agency this year? Hassan Reddick was in that first tier of players they could sign, and they did that. It got quiet after. They were striking out a lot on some other targets like, you know, Marcus Williams and Allen Robinson, and you were getting nervous about the perception, the reputation of the Eagles right now, especially after swinging out on Russell Wilson, and you heard everything about Deshaun Watson. It wasn't going, you know, exactly the way you wanted, but there was no panic. And then things got better. They brought in Kazir White. They brought in Zach Pascal. And it still was like, okay, like everything's going to be about the draft. The draft is going to be where this team dramatically improves. And man, was that correct. Not in the exact way we thought. We didn't think they were going to trade for A.J. Brown. We didn't think they were going to be able to get both Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean in the third round, nobody predicted that. The fact that you could get Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, and A.J. Brown with those first-round picks, we would have probably said you could probably get one, maybe two if things go right, but to get all three, then to strike out at safety and corner in the draft, despite all the good that happened in that draft, I was very nervous about the secondary, only to then in May and June, get James Bradberry and Jaquiski Tartt, two long-term starters that have played at a very high level on defense in the past. James Bradberry just a couple years ago, a Pro Bowler. Jaquiski Tartt, a long-term starting safety in this NFL that has, by the way, an extremely efficient coverage grade since 2019. So he's 31, and again, isn't a long-term solution, but he's definitely a short-term solution. I think he's your best safety on the team right now. To see everything that's happened since day one of the 2022 NFL draft for this Eagles team. Again, we weren't panicking before that, but we did not have the expectations that we now do. This Eagles roster, after Tartt signed and Bradberry the last 2 months, they look like one of the most complete rosters in the NFL. They look like easily one of the most complete rosters in the NFC. If they had, like, let's say they pulled off the trade for Russell Wilson, like if Jalen Hurts takes the step, this team is a Super Bowl contender. I really do think that. If Jalen Hurts takes a, you know, even if it's not an MVP like step like Carson Wentz in 2017, if he is significantly improved in the passing game this year, a wild card loss is not enough this year. The bar has been raised from last year, and that feels great. Again, last year we talked about, you know, the pressure, how it was fun to watch this team make the playoffs, and there were certain different expectations for a new young team. Like, it was okay if they lost that wild card game. We were enjoying it in a different way than in the past, but we did miss the expectations, even though it really hurt the Eagles in 2018 and 2019. In 2020, you want those expectations on your football team, and they have those back now. Like, this team should be playing for a championship this year if all goes right, and that's exciting. Super exciting. Guys, make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles on all podcast platforms, free and available all throughout the week, each and every week throughout the year, Monday through Friday. All podcast platforms are available in audio form, video form on YouTube, And make sure you follow us on Twitter at Locked On Birds and at DiBiase LOE. I'm going to sign off, though, for today. Thanks so much for joining us on this edition of LOE. Continue to be your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. And we thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Make sure your second listen is the Locked On NFL podcast. All the news across the league in under 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your shows. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening. And let's go Birds.